Sure. Hi everyone, welcome to our third panel of the 2022 Maine Outdoor Film Festival. I am Nick Callanan, the festival's director. I'd like to pass things over to Emma Greg-Brego, who is moderating this panel. I hope you truly enjoy it. I think we're in for quite a treat. Thank you.
Hi, like Nick said, I'm Emma Greg-Brego. I'm a commercial and narrative film producer based in Actually, I'm based in Saco. Just recently moved, I realized. I'm also the president of the Maine Film Association, which is a great organization advocating for Maine film. If you don't already know what the MFA is, you should definitely go check us out. And today, I am so excited to be chatting with three amazing filmmakers and just having a conversation about their work, their process, and their experience in this industry. And I think it's going to be a really fun conversation. So thank you all for being here, guys. Yay. I'll introduce everybody. I just want to shout out to MOFF for putting this whole event together. Thank you so much for giving us this showcase and this platform and all the work you guys do. And a pray. I kept on calling it a praise, and they're like, you really need to learn how to not use the S. Anyway, so I'm going to introduce everyone on our lovely panel. I've got their whole intros here, so forgive me while I read off of my phone. First, I'm going to go Anita Clearfield, which, hey, gotta wave your hand, like, who are you? So she has many years of award-winning production experience, including nationally distributed documentaries, including Olivia Records' More Than Music, Angela Davis' Walls into Bridges, and Vacation Nicaragua. Before coming to Maine in the 90s, she worked in all phases of production in Los Angeles, receiving an independent filmmakers grant from AFI, producing several award-winning music videos, and was a production coordinator at the Disney Studios in Burbank. As a staff producer-director for Maine PBS, Ms. Clearfield's documentaries won numerous awards, and her most recent film, her more recent film work is comprised of 2 films made with Jeffrey Layton, including Natasha Myers, An Unstill Life. Ms. Clearfield is also a video installation artist and a founding member of Lumen Art, a collective that creates a large-scale video projections on buildings to support issues of social, economic, and environmental justice in Maine. She holds a BFA in film from Syracuse University. I also went to undergrad at Syracuse, just a fun fact. And an MFA from the Massachusetts College of Art and Design. So thank you so much for being here with us. Next, we have the lovely Juliet Sutherland. Hi, Juliet. Hi. All right, she is an artist and filmmaker based in Portland, Maine. Her documentary work focuses on artists and creative or personal processes. She works as a freelance cinematographer and filmmaker, running her own company, Juliet Films, which produces corporate, educational, and promotional videos. When not doing client work or editing personal projects, she's out surfing, free diving, or somehow in the water with a camera. That's really freaking cool. Thank you so much for being here, Juliet. And now our final panelist, I'm so happy you're here. Lamia Lazarak is a Moroccan filmmaker based in Portland, Maine. She graduated from Savannah College of Art and Design with a bachelor's in film and television and a passion for documentary film. Her love for nonfiction storytelling, first began when she directed and produced an award-winning investigative hip-hop documentary short entitled Camouflage. From examining issues of gun violence in Savannah, Georgia through hip-hop to telling stories of the crisis against substance abuse disorder in Maine, Lamia continues to devote her work to telling real human stories that have the power to move and inspire change. So a really impressive group of women. I'm so excited to be talking with them today. So what we're going to do now is just show some clips of their work so you get a sense of films that they have worked on, created in the past, and then we're going to dive into some chatting about those films and those processes.
I actually like the term activist artist much better than political artist, mostly because people pigeonhole you that way.
As difficult as a lot of the subjects that Natasha deals with, as difficult as those subjects are. In the process of lifting that burden outside of herself, she is able to, add into it all these different aspects of her personality. So it's got humor, it's got anger, it's got love, it's got outrage, it's got grief.
Hey, Kathy, why are we up so high? We're out to change the world, Natasha. Soon enough, you might as well come on in and see the art show before the flood. They say live each day like it's your last. Well, this is it. It all ends soon, so why not come in now? Absolutely free. You won't regret it, and even if you do, it won't matter soon. So step right up. There's nothing cooler than the end of the world. And the end.
All right, let's go to Juliet's films now, a short excerpt from their work as well.
Ready for the dump. So, I'm going to get the model. First, we have to have a little wake me up. Chop it with an espresso. Bring a little zing. So here's the model. So should I just go about doing what I'm doing? In our society, the basic premise is you need to make people work. You need the carrot and the stick. But artists are different in the sense that they have their own internal drive and they feel the need to do their work, whatever that happens to be. And when that's the case, external impositions on time, like for me having to go to school, was an imposition on my time because I couldn't attend to my agenda, which was messing around with boats.
So what is it that you're doing?
Well, I am about to make a base for this model. This model needs a cradle to hold it in. And so I am getting ready to do that. So I'm deciding how high off the table it's going to be and how thick the piece of wood is and the spacing on the base. So
how do you determine that?
Well, long experience.
Surfing for me is a place where I can go for connection. It's a place where I feel free. It's a place where I can't think about any other thing except what's about to happen. You have to be in the moment.
When you're learning to read the waves, there's an intense focus and concentration that needs to come with that. I can't be thinking about what I'm going to be eating for dinner later or what the dumb thing I said earlier in the day was. I feel like I need to be, and I am, very present.
It always humbles you, and you're connecting to something that's so much bigger than yourself.
Thank you. And Lamia, we have your videos next.
Yeah, so one's an excerpt from Unsinkable Ships, the film that is in MOFF, and another is a trailer for a short series that I'm doing on a music residency. Dear Guinea Pig Bee, I am writing to you from a spaceship you once lived in. I was able to read your operating manual for this ship, and I found it to be very helpful. I also stumbled upon your manual at a very opportune time, at a point when the ins and outs of my existence on this ship had become all-consuming, and I'd forgotten all about the ship itself, its astronauts, engineers, architects, and systems. I am pleased to report to you that your work has sent me on an exploration to learn more from those who seldom lose sight of our ship and its movements. Here are my findings.
Sure, is this being recorded? Oh, okay.
Pour le One Beat, c'est un rêve qui se réalise. Like a dream will be a reality now. I'm very happy. On a besoin de collaborer, on a besoin d'être ensemble, on a besoin de s'aider, on a besoin d'échanges mutuels, on a besoin l'un de l'autre. C'est de la magie. C'est un langage universel, c'est une magie. C'est dans ces moments-là qu'on se dit, la musique, c'est notre remède, quoi.
Thank you so much for sharing your work with us. And I think to kick things off, so one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you all is because I'm not a documentary filmmaker. I am a narrative filmmaker. I don't make documentaries. And so I wanted to know kind of what brought you to this medium and why you felt it was the best to tell the stories you wanted to tell. And I'd actually love to start with Anita, because from learning about your work, it felt like there was a very political bent. And if you wouldn't mind just talking a little bit about that.
See if I want to be on mic or not. Okay, why not? I've worked in both documentary and narrative filmmaking and music videos and everything in between. But when I got started, which was eons ago, it was in film. And before there was such a thing as video, no video. Didn't know about that stuff yet. And actually, it had to do with being an artist and wanting to find a medium that was accessible to people, like get out of museums, where there were more people could actually access films. And it was right at a time when people were starting to scratch Hollywood a little bit, and like art film was sort of becoming a thing, and Super 8 was out there, and porta packs where you could go out in the street and do this thing called video. And so it was a time of like real excitement about the medium So I think, yeah, that's what attracted me.
Julia, it's kind of same question. You have this outdoor, like in the films that we were saying, this very outdoor vibe, but why documentary?
I mean, I think it's just I film what I love. So the first clip of mine is actually my father, who's a ship model builder. He's a professional ship model builder. He's been doing it for like 30, 40 years. And just having access to him in a really intimate way that I felt like not anybody could just do, and coming from a sort of cinema verite background where you're just kind of observing and letting whatever's happening unfold, whereas the surf documentary was started during COVID, and so we couldn't sit down and interview people, so we had them send voice memos, and then I was just filming what I was doing, which was surfing, but wanting to show it through my lens, which was, you know, using the words of my friends and other women who were surfing in the winter here in Maine, but it's, you know, more about connecting and being present in nature and less like shredding it and like the California Hawaii style, very masculine, male-dominated world of surfing. So wanting to show my world, basically. And that's how I start. I don't know about you guys, but like I had a little point and shoot camera and I was just like filming everything around me, like in high school and whatever. And I had that opportunity because we had little digital point and shoot cameras that could do that. Yeah, so I think it just was born from, and as a cinematographer, I don't know if you guys film, I mean, I know you film and edit, but I identify as a cinematographer because I use the camera as like my eyes, and I want to look at what I love and share that. So,
were you already doing underwater photography? She's also a great underwater cinematographer. Like, what came first? Being able to do that or the surf documentary?
So the surfing came first. I just got back from doing an underwater dance film in Sicily and learned to freedive in the Mediterranean and stuff. So filming with a camera underwater, like no scuba gear, just holding your breath, and
because filmmaking's not hard enough.
Right, I know. I just have to do it.
Now I'm gonna hold my breath and make creative decisions.
And be like swimming. Like it's really hard to back up when you're swimming, so you got to be careful. But yeah, I got the underwater housing to do the surf film, and I also got a drone, and I loved both, and that just sort of pushed me to go further, and I was doing sort of art photo underwater stuff with a performance artist friend, so it just opened a lot of doors for me just following what I loved. So that's what I love about the medium.
Thank you. And Lamia, so yours is an animation, but it is still a doc. Can you tell us a little bit more about Unsinkable Ships? And that is a documentary, correct? Like, I don't know if that's gonna like. No, it's Unsinkable Ships. It is a documentary, correct? Or is it? Tell us a little bit more about that, because I don't want to limit you as like, oh, you're just a documentary filmmaker.
Yeah.
But what is like that project?
To be honest, like how I got into documentary. Well, I didn't even know what documentary was. Like seriously, it had always been about movies for me when I was growing up. It was movies, movies, movies. And when I went to college, I started off as a performer, and then hated the competition.
Performing, you mean like an actress?
Yeah.
Or like...
And then was typecasted a lot as like the antagonist always, and I hated that.
Did you take that personally?
I did. One woman was like, "Oh, it must be your eyebrows. Like you got really bushy ones."
And evil people have bushy eyebrows.
I don't know. And so I was like, I just want to like make my own stories so I can be in them. And then I fell in love with being behind the camera. And I didn't know what documentary was until like I found a story that I really loved. And it was a real story about a rapper who had gotten shot in 2003 holding his 2-year-old son, and he was just about to make it, and everybody loved him, but it was just like such talent cut short. And I was like, oh, I want to make a movie about this person. It's going to be like a narrative film. Like I'm going to hire an actor to like play the rapper. And then I was like, wait a second, like what if I just started interviewing people who knew him and stuff like that? And everybody was like, oh yeah, that's a documentary.
And I've seen a trailer for Camouflage. That's the film you're talking about. And it shouldn't be as good as it looks. I'm just like, because that's like, it is a really powerful piece. And it's really wonderful, the fact that you just kind of, maybe that's wise because it's very organic and natural, and they're like, I just want to hear people's story, and I feel like that's what all of you want to do, is to hear people's story. I actually want to keep it on you because with Unsinkable Ships, my favorite thing about working in film, I'm not a cinematographer, I'm not an editor, I don't know how to do anything, except I know how to produce, I know how to bring people together, and what's so cool about filmmaking is you can do that. Like you need so many people sometimes to know how to do the story, to be your editor. And so with Unsinkable Ships, you didn't do the animation, correct?
No.
So can you tell me a little bit about that, deciding to bring in a collaborator and do that?
It was definitely a very COVID film too. Shout out to Alex, who both of our films, the surfing film and Unsinkable Ships, were submitted as Main Street USA. Just when a wonderful filmmaker, Alex, decided to get a bunch of people to make films during COVID, during the winter in Maine. Let's see what happens. And I was like, I knew that I wanted to do something about Buckminster Fuller because he has a connection to Maine.
Can you tell us who that is? Tell us a little bit more about that.
So Buckminster Fuller is a theorist. He created the geodesic dome. He was a theorist and a big thinker, and he came up with the term spaceship Earth. Mm-hmm. So the idea that we're all kind of on this spaceship, and if we use the resources appropriately and use the engineers, which is nature, the way that it should be, then we will be fine floating on this spaceship. So that was, and he has a very big connection to Maine because he used to summer on Bear Island in Maine, and he just noticed so much stuff being out on islands. And I made that connection between Buckminster Fuller and islands and island life, and how they're also kind of on rocks floating in water, and how they do use resources the way that Bucky thought we should be using resources on our ship. So I call it experimental doc because usually I don't put my voice in things. That was I
thought that was you.
That is very risky, and I don't know, you're supposed to be sort of
right, documentary, you're supposed to it's very objective. Here are the lions and they're doing this thing and the camera does not exist, but somehow you're seeing all of this. It's very weird.
I mean, it's a question I've heard people talk about is is that even possible?
No.
If I put a camera in front of anyone in this room or any person, I know for myself, I'm going to be different. I'm probably going to be different. I don't know, is that something that you guys think about as Julie, you're not
I like to include that. I mean, you hear me talking to the person. I'm clearly I'm there, and you're aware that someone is editing and showing you what I want you to see, right? So personally, I would rather address that and be yeah, I'm here, and so you're aware of it. Because I don't know, there's TV documentaries are such a thing now, and then people watch Tiger King, they're that's real, that's the truth, but that's one version of the story. But if you're aware that certain people showed you that, I don't know. I like to include it. But
Anita, in your experience, I'd love to
I think it's really hard to be objective, and people used to think there was such a thing, and I think now that truth has become so relative, and there can be fake truth, I think it's clear that it's not. But when we did our documentary about called Vacation Nicaragua, it was during the Contra War. And I think one of the best reviews of it said, this should be in a propaganda museum. It's excellent propaganda.
Can you tell us
a
little bit about?
It's kind of a left-handed compliment, but it was following some tourists down to Nicaragua during the Contra War. And we had been working in music videos a lot, and so we got all this music from Bob Dylan and Peter Gabriel and Talking Heads and stuff. And we thought, well, we'll make it real accessible to people, because we want them to see the real Nicaragua. We got all these Nicaraguan musicians, and it was this real interplay between the two. And but as Kenneth Turan said in the LA Times, I mean, it was in service to trying to get Americans to see something about Nicaragua besides what the media was portraying at the time, which was, all Reagan's line of propaganda. So we wanted alternate propaganda. That's
Did you say Reagan was? Did you say Reagan just now? Yeah. Okay.
Ronald.
That makes a lot of
yeah.
Ronald Reagan's War, 1986 is the year we were down there. We were on the last plane out before the embargo.
Oh my goodness. And so those are, I mean, that's an intense, to go from music, I mean, I've made music videos before and they are not like, that is not, they are very relaxed, but if too much, but they're not going to Nicaragua to like go film like a war happening and showing like a different side. So was it a situation where you were doing like music videos in order to like sustain your, was that a passion project?
Yeah, I've always had a couple
like
paths, like you do one to make money and you do one that's your true love. And sometimes they cross where you get a grant. But that's yeah, it's hard to do both. And sometimes you can do stuff for money that's fun, but yeah.
Well, I feel like you guys could probably speak to that. You're both, like, you have Juliet Films continually making videos for clients and also as a professional editor and director, filmmaker. Like, let's talk about that balance. Like, trying to, I think that's a natural, like, how do you I feel like, at least from my experience, I got into this because I love movies, but no one's going to pay me to necessarily make the movies I want to make all the time, so I make commercials and we sell stuff or whatever, and like, what is your, how do you find balance? Like, what is your experience? And I'm sure you're still constantly trying to find balance. It's like, Juliet, why don't we start with you? I know, like, you got a lot of, I'm sure you both have opinions, because it's like.
We were just talking about this because, I mean, you should talk about editing, but yeah, like if you're editing stuff for a client all day, like the last thing you really want to do is edit more on your own thing. Yeah. But I think, I mean, I freelance because I just can't have a normal 9-to-5 job, and I need my own time, and I need to like go surf in the morning and then I'll do work later. You know, it's like, it's my life and I make it work for me, and I think my secret is I just don't work that much.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm very busy, but I don't necessarily like work that much. But I mean, thankfully, you get paid a lot to do this work. So.
Only if you're good at it. So like.
Okay, well.
Like, and you are good at it, so that's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lami, tell me about your like. You're like balanced or trying to find it.
I'm still figuring it out. I feel like I got really lucky these past 2 years where like I've been working on projects that I really, really care about. Like it's, like a lot of stuff with like the Recovery in Maine series, and I've spent a month in Algeria.
What is the Recovery in Maine series?
So the Recovery in Maine series is a series directed and produced by Alex Morrow, and it's about recovery in just different parts of the recovery sphere in Maine from substance abuse. And so she goes to different counties and just like explores different facets of it. The one I'm working on right now is incredible because it's a youth program, and it's kids, and they decided that the kids should direct this one. And these are kids that have been like affected by substance abuse in one way or another, and they're interviewing each other, and they're just kind of like learning about each other in that way, and kind of like just it's almost therapeutic for them, and I'm very excited for it. But it's just it's heavy stuff, but it's stuff that I really care about. So I don't know, like sometimes I'm okay just working on these projects. I do have my personal stuff, but like, I don't know, these past few years, I feel like the work that I've been doing is work that I've been thinking about doing for a very long time.
Well, I totally get that, because I was working, like my dream was to work only on movies, narrative films, big budgets, and like the last big movie I worked on was Greta Gerwig's Little Women down in Boston. I was part of the extras casting department. And like we cast 1,700 extras, all in period piece costume, and you know it was the dream that I was hoping for, which was working 5 to 6 months in Boston, like away from my life in Maine, like away from my husband, away from my friends, and I was like, I am supposed to love this, and I didn't. And so then I got into commercials because it's like, oh, it's max. I'm talking like 5 days max, maybe 1 day of shooting, and then you get to go home at the end of the day. And so I still think about that all the time, though, because like, am I giving up my dream of like, because I fell in love with Maine and a Mainer, And so now I'm here, but like kind of that constant questioning myself, did I give up something in order to be here?
Well, it's that discrepancy between what sounds really impressive and cool and what you actually love to do.
Yeah.
So I'd rather do what I love to do.
Like, Anita, I feel like you can speak to it, because I felt like the room go like Disney. Like, you know, once we heard that, and now you're in Maine.
And I learned so much being there and everything, all that LA stuff. But so I don't regret it so much as like, I think what happens though is you set bars for yourself that you call it success, and it's not. You know, it's not out there, it's in here. And so it's like enjoying the creative process is so much more important than reaching that thing, that success thing. And it's very hard in film, especially because it's got that, you know, shimmer of something.
Sounds glamorous.
Yeah, yeah. And then, you know, oh, we're doing music videos with so-and-so, you know, and it's like, but Kurt Cobain won't come out of his dressing room because they're all doing cocaine and it's 2 in the morning and I want to go home. You know, it's like it's not, it gets old.
Yeah. I wanted to, like, add to what you were saying. Like, I really never thought I would be an editor. Like, that was, like, the last image I had of myself as a filmmaker. Yeah.
You're a really good editor.
Well,
I'll just
but,
say.
like, it's, like, kind of like just drinking a bunch of coffee in your PJs and just like
in front of a computer,
front of a computer and like pacing and talking to you. Like that was not like what I pictured myself as a filmmaker. I thought I was just gonna be like out and like doing crazy underwater stuff. But I don't know. I love it and I hate it at the same time, and I think that's a good sign.
I always joke with my friends, it was like, we should just quit and become accountants, and like just like we'd make more money and like, or just have a 9 to 5, but we'd get bored so fast. I feel like that's like the itch, that I have to be doing something creative, I have to be just making something new constantly. And I almost, like I said, I almost wish I didn't, because I think maybe I'd be happier, but I'd be so much more bored. So that's more. I wanted to like touch on, because I want to open up for questions as well to people, but kind of a last thing, because we are all women in this industry, there's this term that some of you might be aware of. It's called the female gaze, and it's like similar to the male gaze. I actually have a definition in here because I was worried I was going to like, it's a feminist theory term referring to the gaze of a female spectator, character, or director of an artistic work, but more than the gender, it's an issue of representing women as subjects having agency. And I love talking about this kind of stuff because it's like this double, at least in my opinion, I always feel like it's this double-edged sword, because like I do not want to be just seen as a female filmmaker. I don't want people to just, I would love to just be a filmmaker all the time, but I also am so proud of my perspective, and I'm proud of the work I do, and I love being on the inside when people do dumb sexist shit, and I'm like, don't do that, like, here's why. And so it's this balance that I always feel like I'm constantly working out, and I just would love to talk to you guys about like this. The idea of the female gaze is that because I'm a woman, I have a perspective, and that shows up in my art and in my filmmaking, and it is recognizable because of how I portray women in particular. And I guess I'm curious, do you guys believe that the female gaze is a thing? And do you think it's a good thing, or like just I realize it's mean of me to bring it up when we only have like 15 minutes, but like I'd love to hear, like, I just think that's a really interesting conversation to have.
I'd like to hear your perspective first.
Okay, well, back in the day. No, well, coming as an artist, a painter at first and stuff too, the Judy Chicago, Miriam Shapiro, Woman in Space, feminist theory, Lucy Lepard, all that stuff. Why are there no great women artists? The early 70s, you know, that's all the stuff that we were like trying to figure out. Well, do women make circles and men make squares? You know, and we were trying to, you know, what is a female? And the gaze also started as how the model is looking, and the content then, the people in your films, how are they treated, how are they looking at you, and then of course the big thing is the audience, who's going to see it, and that gaze is in our society patriarchal. So a man or a woman can make something that's very consciously feminist, but it's going to go out into a patriarchal world. And so the gaze that we'll be seeing, you know, like you can do something about my genderqueer autobiography, but somebody out there is going to go, oh, porn, you know, because they're looking at it from their sexist society. When in the 70s, I did a film called Olivia Records. It was about a women's recording company, which was like this whole new exciting thing because women would make their own kind of music and they would have big auditoriums full of only women. And it was so exciting to be in a space that was all women, women-only space, making music that spoke to women, and it was just woohoo. And we made a film, and I went and interviewed all those people, but I had a women's crew. And I think it was one of the first time there was an all-women's crew, but we had to make it in video because our funding was for television, blah, blah, blah. But to make a long story short, it was a bitch because there weren't people who had worked in video. The women filmmakers had worked in film, and at one point I was called out where it was like they were going to take away the crew from me because, you know, we came back from a studio session with green film, green video, because we didn't know about color balancing at the time. You know, this was like really early on, you know? So made a bunch of compromises, did a bunch of stuff, persevered, made the film. But it did go on PBS, you know? Who's looking at these women in the end? Who is that gaze?
And it's also such a, like, something to think about is it's not a singularity. My experience is different than your experience is different than your experience, and to sometimes always lump things, so like, oh, you're going to be like the speaker for all women or something like that. It's just like, that doesn't exist. In the same way it doesn't exist for men, it doesn't exist for anyone. It doesn't exist for anyone. It can
and
be
you're
limiting.
the sum of many things, not
like,
just being a woman.
Yeah, exactly.
That's Bucky Fuller.
That's like, no, explain. What do you mean?
Well, the sum of its parts. The the thing is greater than the sum of its parts. That was like
synergy.
Synergy. That's it.
I like you point with the mic. We're like synergy.
Yeah. At the same time, though, I feel like what is feminine is really just a category of attributes that get assigned to female, like passive, docile, emotional. Men have those things too. And so I feel like a female perspective is just creating opportunities to tell those kinds of stories that men connect to as well. So I showed the surf film to UNE Surf Club, and it was like, you know, college, co-ed surf club, and we showed the film, which is about women who surf in the winter, but it was a bit subversive in the sense, I mean, it wasn't like, we're women and we surf. It's like, here's a surf film. We happen to all be women. And it was a very, I mean, you saw a little excerpt. It's sort of contemplative and very connected to nature, and like, we're really small. And so many men in the audience raised their hand. They're like, I so relate to this. This is how I feel when I'm fishing. And I feel connected and I feel calm. So it just, I mean, I was shocked and delighted that it spoke to them in that way. And also even with the film about my dad, like, sure, the film is about a white male, like, aren't we all exhausted with white men? But it was through the eyes of me, his daughter, a woman who was going to look at him differently than maybe another man might. So.
No, I think that's really, no, that makes so much sense in the world. So with our time remaining, I'd love to open it up for questions, if anybody has some, and if not, we will totally keep talking. So just, yeah, right there.
I'd like to ask all three of you, what have been some of your influences regarding film, either popular, underground, any range?
It's such a hard question sometimes because I only can think of the last movie I saw, which was Predator, and like it's like such a like, oh no, what are my influence? Like, what are my? So I'm gonna let you go first. So I'm last.
Well, from college on, Godard was a huge experience.
Oh yeah.
Just the whole idea that you subvert the narrative. Subvert the narrative. Yeah, so he was pretty huge, and Agnes Varda, those new wave blokes were very cool, and more recently, I think Jane Campion's about the best filmmaker alive.
I really love Chris Marker. I studied experimental documentary film, and his work really made an impression on me. And then I also saw Baraka and Iquanasquatsi, those films. I really loved the lack of narration. And then I saw a film at a festival 10 years ago called Life in a Day. And they sent cameras all over the world, asked people all over the world to film their life on like July 22nd and just send them the footage. And they edited this like beautiful opus to humanity. And it sort of reminded me of like, I mean, going from your days where like cameras were hard to come by, we couldn't see people's life. And then now everything's being documented and shared and getting to see what everybody all over the world is doing. So I loved that. It was like really intimate and personal and looking at people's lives. Like I studied documentary film and anthropology, so I'm really interested in like the human connectedness that we all have through my documentary films.
Oh man, mine changes all the time. I love all of those films. I love Chris Marker, like Sans Soleil is. And did Chris Marker do The Jetty?
La Jetée? Yeah.
That's a great one. Actually, I love that one.
Well, yeah, because you like photography too, so.
It's technically a film.
I know, but it's still photos.
No, but it's interesting because it's a series of photographs, but it moves.
And narrated,
just,
yeah.
It moves for like a couple of seconds, and I thought that was...
Like not stop motion, you mean? Like it's just a series of photographs unconnected?
Yeah, a series of photographs connected, created a narrative through that, and then, but there's just this one scene where like, it goes to 24 frames, maybe? Or maybe she just like blinks her eye.
Yeah, she opens her eyes.
Paying attention, it's not a photograph. It moves. That for me is a really great film because super crafty. Like you can make... The great thing about storytelling in general or documentaries is that we're very thrifty, and I feel like we're like Mainers are like that too. Like we can make stories out of nothing.
And it's like whatever resources it's all about what resources you have. It doesn't like matter if you don't have what you wish you could have. It's
exactly.
like what you have in front of you.
You have to learn how to do that, especially when you're working alone a lot, and that's kind of how the industry has moved. But like I think it was a lobsterman who like gave me this term. It was like to glom things together, which is like you like things that should not be put together to be an engine is and I feel like I editing for me is like that. It's kind of like cooking too, like whatever you have, you like try to make something good.
There's this phrase that like, you know, you have a right, especially for narrative and documentary, I guess, it's the fact that like the writer writes a script and then you shoot it, but like the editor is the final storyteller because they are actually, whatever you actually shot is going to be put together, and how are they going to save that project? Jaws would not be Jaws without the editors. Like that is the only reason that movie is as good as it is, in my humble opinion. But people can be, side note, sorry. Another question.
It's like some of mine are on Vimeo.
Yeah, Vimeo.
The film Natasha Mayer's An Unstill Life that you saw the trailer for is a documentary about a Maine artist named Natasha Mayers. And that's been at festivals and stuff, but it's now online at the Maine Masters website.
Nice.
There you go. Go team.
It's like up in Belfast, the Colonial Theatre. I think definitely check out everyone's website, which is on the MOFF like you'll find their names on the MOFF website, and Googling, like you have a lot of stuff online, I assume, right? It's like,
I need to update.
Like, you need to upload?
I need to update, yeah.
I was like, you need to upload this stuff.
I mean, it's interesting because now I feel like I'm creating things for Instagram in that like tall, like actually, so I was shooting the underwater dance in that vertical because honestly the human body is that vertical. So yeah, and it makes sense. So
was that a social media post, or why did you go with vertical?
Actually it was on a screen and in an installation, and then
like how big was that installation?
It was a big figure, and that was the body of the figure was the video.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. But also I have to do a plug for Lumen Art, which is a group that does video projections on buildings. And if there's any filmmakers here who would like to get involved in doing video projections out in the street on this fall, we've got a lot of abortion and voting things, exciting things we can do in our spare time. So look up Lumen Art with 2 R's because it stands for the Artist Rapid Response Team, Lumen Art.
And any other questions? Yes?
Well, I guess the most rewarding aspect of what you do? What do you find that really drives you, aside from the things you have to do, personal?
All this cash.
No, like you're just rolling in it, right? Just like so. She said all this cash.
I missed it too.
I mean, I don't know if you feel this as an editor, but when I make like a good edit, I feel it in my body.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Like it's so satisfying to just, and to know that I made it the way it feels good for me. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Sometimes you'll be like pulling your hair for like hours and hours, and then it just, like, you don't know how it happens, but it comes together. You're just like, don't know how that happened. Probably cannot recreate it, but it just happened. And then you feel things that like, you're just like, okay, this is why I stick with it.
Yeah, I like it when you cry when you see your film.
It's like I had a boyfriend. I'm married to a cinematographer now, and I was dating someone who was not an artist, and he would be like, why do you do this if it makes you so upset all the time? And I'm like, because I can't not do it, so it's just one of those things. Like, and that's why we're not together. But I think in the last like couple of minutes, I'd love a couple of things. As kind of our closing out, I'd love for each of you an opportunity to plug if you have any projects that are recent or things, your websites, your Instagrams, all that good stuff. And also kind of a piece of advice for, I don't know if we have any young filmmakers in the audience, but kind of things that you wish you knew when you started out, or advice that you've learned now, just lessons you've learned being in this industry. I think that would be a great way to close this out. So Anita, can I start with you?
Well, no, I would just go back to that same thing where, you know, don't set bars of success that are out there, especially when you get involved. You think, oh, if I can just get that job, then I'll be happy, or if I can just become a blank director, editor, whatever, I'll be happy. But it's really enjoying that creative process along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think in that same vein, I felt like for a long time I wanted to like be a legitimate filmmaker, so I was like trying really hard to be this thing.
Legitimate.
And it was just like trying to do what other people were doing that I thought I was supposed to do. And when I think back to how I started, I just picked up a camera and I was like looking at the things I loved, and that spoke the loudest and connected with people the most, because that was my authentic self. Like reaching out to your authentic self. And through that, I feel like I developed my own voice, which then was unique. So yeah, I think just do what you love and go for it. Like I started shooting on a tiny point and shoot. Whole films are shot on iPhones now. Like we have the technology. You don't need anything fancy. You just need to start doing it, and you'll learn so much through that.
I think that one of the biggest things that it's taught me, at least, is just like to listen, like listen, be a really good listener. And you just discover very quickly that like literally everybody you meet has a story, and there's a good one in every person. And that's the magic of this, I think, documentary as a craft. It's like for so long I thought that like I was hiding in the stories of others because I didn't want to tell my own, or some like really deep weird shit like that. And then I realized that like you know, it is a little bit mine, but I'm just telling them through other accounts, and I think that's wicked cool.
Especially with the stories you choose to follow, like, because
yeah, you do choose, yeah,
like
yeah, you choose to,
because there's, like you said, there's infinite stories, but not everything is going to catch you and be like, I have to tell this. This is going to keep me up at night.
Exactly.
This is going to bring me to tears because I'm so frustrated or angry, and
infinite ways to tell the same story.
Yes,
it's freaky.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here. This has been such a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, thank you for doing this.
Thank you guys for like being here and joining us. So like, thank you, MOFF. We're closing it out today. There's a great films happening this evening. You guys should definitely stick around for it and grab some beverages up front. They're really tasty. And I bet these ladies will be around for a bit if you guys want to chat. Thank you guys so much. Ooh, woo.